Do, 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 do. I got the filters set up. And people are like, why do you set the filters up to 20? I don't go to 20 minutes. And it filters out all the. This is Freedom Phil. Like, subscribe. Let's get into this. And once again, as I always say, if you're a parent and you're letting your kids just randomly watch the internet and your kids are watching this, that's on you. I talk about real things. I cuss. You know? What I'm going to talk about today, not much of really anything. And I just want to point out, I think there is some truth to the concept of intermittent fasting. You know, like the idea that if you don't eat in the morning, your body kind of grabs the calories you're already having. Yeah, because I've noticed this. If I have like some pasta, I just get tired. If I have a really good meal, I just get a little tired. So let's just say I have a good breakfast. Eat a good breakfast, and then my body's all like, you know, like, hey, I don't want to hike down to the river. You know, like hiking down there, not such a big deal, but when you're packing up 4 gallons of water, or I should say jugs, because those other bottles are 3 liters. But, you know, you go down there, do some laundry, do this, and then you're hoofing it back up. And this time of day, it ain't so bad. Ain't bad at all, in fact. People are like, what do you mean? Well, once it starts getting around 70-something, 80-something, if it's 80, I don't even want to deal with it. Part of the reason I go down there to get river water is because, you know, I can use it for utility stuff. Yeah, you got your drinking water for cooking and drinking. But as far as the dog, he can drink the river water as is. Cleaning pots and pans, stuff like that. Backwoods bidet, that's set up. Yeah, that's bathing. River water's just fine. Because sometimes I don't feel like going down there. You know? Part of it has to do with, you know, if I go in early morning, it's nice. But occasionally you get some hunters or people out here that are firing guns and shit. You know, you don't want to be mistaken for a critter of some sort. People say, oh, mistake a person. Well, it happens. But yeah, once it gets a bit colder, then in the middle of the day isn't so bad to go down there. But even then, actually, to be real about it, I kind of like getting everything done that I have to go down there for in the early morning. Because then if I want to set up my solar oven, I can prep my solar oven about, say, now. And then I come back. In fact, theoretically, I could just prep my solar oven right now. And then, you know, go down there. It's pretty unlikely anything's going to happen. But all the same, I kind of prefer to be around when it's deployed. Kind of like one of those things where it's like, I was like thinking to myself as I was cooking out with the propane. Normally I use my rocket stove out here. And I was thinking as I was doing it, I'm like, why aren't I using my rocket stove? And then I thought to myself, well, all this sun, why aren't you using the solar oven? And you just kind of get in the habit of convenience. And I think that is one of the pollutions of society. Propane is nice. It is. I'm not complaining about it. It's just, and you think about how, you know, you're willing to pay that extra $10, $20 ever so many months to not have to go and get firewood, little sticks at the base of these shrubs and stuff like that. Hell, I got two or 3 bags of driftwood from up north that I got for using for rocket stove fuel. But then it was just so goddamn dry up there in the north that I was just like, nah. And when I was sieged in, I was just like, well, what the hell? I had this camp kitchen on the back of my van. You know, the Camp Chef oven. And truth, I actually kind of want to pack that with me because I could get a splitter and I could use that. You know, I mean, I don't really, given the choice between the solar oven and using the propane, I'll use the solar oven. But, you know, I got to be honest. Sometimes that, you know, let's just say it looks like this is something about solar cooking that you will get used to. Everything looks fine. It's a clear day. Just like that day up there in the Twin, the troll clouds. Over on this side over here, it was clear. Past me this way, it clears up. But for whatever reason, there's just this little cloud that would develop right where above where I was at, fucking up my sun all day. And then you're just like, well, just use the propane oven to finish it off. The other thing is too is just like make a noodle dish, you know, like you take a pack of mac and cheese, some black beans, if you happen to have some sort of meat, put it in there, cheese on the top of it near the end. Pretty good. Maybe some, scalloped potatoes in there. And then while you're at it, bake a loaf of cornbread, or I call it the Mutarian fruit loaf. Take some apples. If you had one thing I actually really like, and I actually picked some up when I was at a food bank. They have these bags of dried cherries, and that's one thing. But after Thanksgiving, they have tons of cranberries for a while there. And it's kind of funny, you go to some of the food banks. If you migrated between one area to the next, you get the upper food banks about, I don't even know how many miles, 30, 40 miles, 50 maybe, up there, where they're really good food banks. And so you get a bunch of stuff there, and then you come back down here. But personally, it's getting to that time of year up there when it's just start getting cold. And when I say cold, I'm just saying, like, it's just chilly. Not to mention, another reason I don't like going up in the Black Rock area as much is, like, I'd rather deal with the heat down here than deal with all the friggin' people. And then you got the nosy types. The guys that think they're like, the unofficial ranger. Well, do you have a permit to be here? Really? I mean, it's like a $20 permit. But it's just like, I don't mind the idea of buying the permit if I use it a lot. But I just thought to myself at one point, I'm like, well, what do they have up there? Really, other than, actually, there are some good stores up in the neighboring area. Some really good shops. But for the most part, what do they have up there that I don't have an abundance down here? In fact, one of the things I could say is it's actually easier to find water down here than it is to find it up there. Yeah, I mean, if I really look, I bet I could find a place. But yeah, I mean, there's about a month there on either side of when you're down here in the wasteland, where up in that area would be nice. Basically, because they're just a little bit higher up in elevation, you could basically work it to where you're here for, say, 5 months. And then, like, mid-October, it's still really hot down here. And that's where if you had a hammock stand, you could just set it up, like, in the shade of your vehicle. And then it's perfect, it's hot in the van, but then it's like just the right temperature outside in a hammock. In fact, right now it's great hammock temperature in the shade of the van. But you kind of work it to where you're up there when it gets good. You got maybe a month tops up there where it's really good, just like when it's the best down here. And then you could be working your way up into the hills, get into that Zion action over the course of time. And really all you're doing is you're just changing elevation mostly. You're not really driving that far. You're just changing elevation. You go up to where the pine trees are, stellar jays, big burnouts that happened years ago. It's really nice up there, by the way. I think it's funny. I mean, it'll be like, 50 something degrees down here. And I don't even know if maybe it's 100 miles from here, maybe less. I'd have to I'd have to really do the numbers. And it'll be like, in the 20s, or, during the night, it gets down to that, it gets real snow. Let me put it like that. Because you've gone from, I don't know, what is it, about 1,500 feet here, 70, I don't even know what the elevation is here. I'd have to look it up. To like 9,000 feet. And that is kind of one of the things that's really cool about this kind of area. That you don't actually have to drive really that far to get to, places that are livable. And so you pick a spot, you stay there for a while, and then, the thing that you really have to figure out is where you can get clean water or how to filter it. Once you build a good filter system or something like that, where, you're up on sticks, some far off up the hill logging road where you're not likely to see anybody up in the trees. And you got some water source close enough nearby where you can just go fill up your jugs and then filter it. Yeah, you'd be in a spot for as long as you feel like, as long as nobody shows up. And a lot of times, when you're on the beaten path a ways, like if you're on one of the main arterial logging roads, desert roads, where everybody can see you, yeah, you're eventually going to run into people, eventually law enforcement of some sort. How long have you been here? But when you're up a hill and it's like, and it's just, let me put it like this. Law enforcement is fucking lazy. For the most part. Unless they've got a reason to fuck around with something, they don't. If something looks like easy prey, or it looks like if we don't eventually run these people out of an area, it'll look like we're not doing our jobs. So you get those situations where if you're in the middle, up some middle of nowhere desert road or forest road, and you're not leaving any trash, leave no mark, leave no nothing, your cat holes, or you dig a deep one, maybe get a composting toilet. Yeah, you can chillax all over the country. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, the law says you got to move every 2 weeks, 25 miles. And that's true. And honestly, that's not really that, you can go 25 miles this way, 25 miles that way. You can have just a loop that you kind of follow in the high ground. I mean, hell, after a while, you might even find that, you get sick of a place. You've been there for a while. And the other one is that you'll find a place. And what are the amenities that you run into? How's the water? How's the cell service? What type of airwave TV stations do you pick up? The airwave TV stations and the internet's part of the reason I like this place. I got really good 5G here. And then there's the airwave TV. I pick up 75 stations down here. Now, mind you, I don't watch most of them. Some of them are the religious stations, or the sell me this stations. But, it's nice to have that variety where you're like, I can watch anything I want. We got sports over here. We got classic shows over there. You got a lot of people that like older school TV. And people are like, what do you mean like older school TV? Like, I like watching MASH. I like Star Trek. I like SG. I like Xena's now on recirculation on Comet. So you got to make some choices on what you're going to watch. You feel, I've seen a lot of that. The Frasier, Roseanne. Then you got your PBS style channels. There's one old channel that's nothing but the Japanese news unit, the Nikkei, or whatever they call it. It's like, I don't know, man. There's just so much to watch. And then, of course, you got video games as well. I'm replaying Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age. I haven't played it in years. I'm having a blast playing it. There's just so much content in that game. And I got 12.5 other games I need to play. I mean, probably 24, even more than that. Like between the Nintendo Switch and the DS, I've probably got 50 games I need to get to. So that's kind of where when a lot of people say, well, how do you handle being out there alone by yourself? I got too much shit going on out here. I got too much of my life that I had to put aside when I was a good, hard-working man, and all that. And I'll go back trucking eventually, probably next spring, because, well, fuck, if I'm gonna have to work for a cheap company, I'm not gonna drive on ice right when I start. Fuck that. I drove on ice for years. I didn't have a problem with it, but not for cheap money. I'm just taking that company just to get the experience. I mean, I got 9 years of experience, and they treat you like a fucking leper if you leave too long. But that's a whole side point. But yeah, I mean, like, the truth is, as cheap as I live out here, as cheap as I live, it's funny to me when people are all like, this whole nonsensical standards of what is living, what is life, what is this. Oh yeah, never mind. I also got a lot of good radio stations around here too. At night, there's a good station that plays coast to coast AM that I can pick up, and it's the whole thing of like, when I say $200 to $300 a month at the lowest rate, $100 a month. I wish I would have known all this when I was a kid, and I kind of did when I lived out in the woods in Joyce, Washington for that 4 years. Rented that land for $100 a month off my buddy's dad. It was one of those gigs where, I spent $100 a month. I had my own little homemade yurt. And the problem is that you don't know when you got a whole entire world of day-to-day propaganda pushed into you as a child, as a young adult, and then as an adult, young late teen, young 20-something. Oh, you need to go out and do that was never really sold on the cars and all that shit because of what people are. They want me to pay out how much? Nah, screw that. And you think one day you think to yourself, well, I should do something responsible with my life. And so that's part of the reason I ended up getting that house in the Rocky Mountain State. I still view that as it was a mistake that I still own. It's just been a bill and a problem. Like the utilities, I've said before, $130 a month for water I almost never drink. And if I turn it off, I got to pay $10,000, $5,000 for sewer, $5,000 for water to reconnect to the city. So I just pay the minimum, winterize the house when I'm not there, and I'd like to find a good renter, but the problem with that is find a good PM. See, the thing that I've realized as I get older is all the things that we were told as children as far as, hard work and be a decent person and all that, it's mostly bullshit. You kind of know this as a kid, but don't get me wrong, hard work is good, but like hard work and then pissing away your money on a house, cars, clothes, kids. I don't mind. Kids are not the problem. They're not. It's usually the wife. And I'll say that, and sometimes it's the guy, ladies, but let's be honest, a lot of the crap that we do as guys is just to keep women happy. Like all these hoops you'll see guys jumping through, we do this for you, honey. We're not doing this. We said, man, I sure want to get up and fucking waste 40 to 50 to 60 hours a week of my life every week of the year to keep up this living standard, life standard that she cares about, this lifestyle. Now, sooner or later, even women have to face what I was kind of forced to face as a kid, which is all the shit that you buy, you own, that's nice for a moment, but then eventually it ain't nothing but garbage. That new car will eventually be an old car. That nice house in the burbs, sure, it's worth more, but it's that money ain't worth nothing. All that lifestyle, the granite countertops of the past. Well, now there's a new type of stone that looks better. Now your old granite countertops, sure, they're still functional and they work fine, but no, they're out of fashion. And one day you finally, a lot of times, people get to the point where they look at life and go, I don't need all this shit. And that's the smart ones. That's that maybe 20% of people that have their head out of their ass eventually. But I say there's a good 50% of that. Yeah, you got your 5%ers like me. And then you got your pull their head out of their ass group. So we got 25% that have a shot. Then we got 50% that maybe they never figure it out and they're just fucking swimming. Then you got the lower 25% that are so fucking, taken in by, what everything they were told. They were told what fashion is. They were told what wealth is. They were told all this stuff is. And they'll keep on playing that casino to the day they die. And that part of that 50% of people, in my opinion, is literally, they're a mixture of both sides. A variant. But, the thing that actually I could say really kind of led me to where I'm at is I've never got a fair shake from society. You know, it doesn't matter how hard I work or how good I'm not the best looking guy in the world. And I'm kind of a large, ogreish man, big, nasty, ogre, human incarnation of Shrek. So I have to be 2 or 3 times as right versus charismatic people who are wrong a lot of the time, but they're lovable, they're likable people. They don't, sit there and lie to your face. And maybe that's some of the truth. If people just want to eat lies, feed them fucking lies. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying at some point when you play the game, you got to get the right results. But all the nonsensical shit that you have to do just to keep up with people, and I just got tired of it. When I was in my 20s, I was sick of it. Like, if I'm going to have to be this much better, this much more right, then I have to start measuring, what am I doing it for? That was what I came to the conclusion in my 20s. I came to that conclusion in my 20s, early 20s, when I was living in that woods for 4 years. And part of it was, and I am an opinionated person, of course. I have people that are trying to tell me, like, something, you're wrong, because no. It's not that I'm wrong. It's that you got a collective of people that all agree with the same wrong thing. Like, and that's where I started going to the line. If I would use mathematics, like time-based decision making, and I'd be like, okay, well, if you're right, well, mathematically disprove this. What do you mean? Emotion? I'm like, no, screw your fucking emotions. It is all personal choices. And it's people making decisions. We got all the evidence we need to know what's right and wrong. Mathematically disprove it. I make a lot of fucking enemies doing that to people. Their entire way of controlling the conversation. You see this on the news regularly. Where, like they were showing this case where some, I don't know, South American country, they just went in there, I think it was Brazil. They went in there and they just cleaned house on this gang. They cleaned house on this gang that had been terrorizing their people for decades. It had been a plague, basically. And all these good, normal people having to live in fear and, make sure to kowtow. And then what does the media do? Well, they show a bunch of crying mothers. Fuck those mothers. Maybe you should throw them on the pile of bodies. What? You raised that fucking demon. You raised those motherfuckers. Hey, maybe if there were some consequences for you for fucking raising these kids this way, you wouldn't see that. Oh, shit. See, that's mathematical mindset, but really cold and calculating, isn't it? Like, what if there were consequences for your family for fucking up? And yeah, I know I'm a hard ass. But, like, they try to use emotional arguments, emotional manipulation, because they don't have an actual logical argument. And I don't think of myself as a hermit so much. But when I'm dealing with people, they can't, by the way, they will become the most logical people you've ever ran into when it comes to their paycheck and their tax return. You think I'm fooling on that? I'm not. They will become the most logical thinking people when it comes to their money. Unless it's on credit. Then they'll be complete, absolute fuck-ups. And like I've said before, and I'll say it again, at some point I just got tired of having the right message. Like when I've talked about retirement by 30, it's not complicated, live as cheap as possible. Go out and get a starter job if you need to, or just while you're young, get into some trade. Get into that trade and basically go out there and work, make the money. Live as cheap as possible so you can invest when you're young. Let your money start making you money. Hey, what, you're in your teens and you're already the investor class if you did it right? Shit, if you did it right, you might even have something figured out by the age of 16. And then you start making that money, start stacking that money, start investing that money. You're not buying cars, you're not buying stupid overpriced clothes, you're not trying to impress a bunch of people that won't give a shit about you when you fall. And you got your money making you money. You keep real quiet. You just tell them, oh yeah, the system, the blah blah. You know why? Because and I experienced this when I paid off my house. I had a lot of people around me that were like, I was living in a van. In fact, I was living in this van at the time. Yeah, I've had that van since '09. How the hell is an 88 a Cadillac line lasted so long? Mostly I was trucking, so the van just sat there at the terminal. I mean, hell, there was one year where I have 2 tanks on this van. It took 13 months to actually drain out the tanks. And I know most people say, well, I can't live like, no, you choose not to. See, that's where we have to go to logical mindset. I can't is usually a lie. You choose not to, and that is a choice you make. And that should be a choice that you bear as your own burden. That burden should be yours, on your shoulders. I shouldn't have to pay one dime or anybody else, or, like if you can't afford your rent because you didn't get your shit together and you had a bunch of kids, that should be you and your family's fucking problem. Go to the church, go to your local people. And you know what? Here's the beauty of that. When you have to go before a group of people, a tabernacle, a church, a mosque, synagogue, people will help you at first. But eventually, if they see that you're making no effort to do anything better, they will eventually be like, hey man, you got to contribute something. You got to do something. That's the beauty of that system. It's voluntary. They can choose to help you. They can choose not to. That's where the majority of the people out here, they're all king shit. Like they get out of college and they get out of whatever, and they look at me, I got this, and then they go out and buy cars, clothes, and all the crap, all on credit. So they don't really own it. Just like their houses. Well, he's going crazy with that 22 ammo over there. Yeah, the wasteland where old people come out to piss away their Social Security checks on 22 ammo. It's funny. Hey, whatever. It's their life. Some people piss it away at casinos. Some people piss it away on the gun range. But funny. Some people put it into investments and make them themselves even more money. Then their meals are free. Their trips to the casino are free. But, I look at it and I think to myself, how much of our society is quite literally this constant reciprocating stupidness. This is like a constant, like, hey, it did make sense before, but let's just double down on stupid. When it comes to the way people structure their lives, money, investing, having children. And we were taught to do that. You were domesticated to the point of failure, as I've said many times before. You are actually successful in the program that you are, even if you're a complete failure, dying of debt, barely be able to pay your child support type of situation. You are actually what the system was programmed to be. It was there to keep you from ever achieving anything. It was there to show you a lifestyle that you would lust and hunger after, to get you stuck. And no amount of logic, because they use them, they pre-train. This is why I refer to a lot of men. It's not men. There's a lot of guys that are guys, dudes, or that motherfucker over there. A lot of them are just overgrown children. And the same thing, the women are even worse. Women don't have to grow up because there's always some stupid simp of a man out there ready to hand his money over. Oh, you got the pussy? I like the pussy. Can you touch pee now? It's perpetual adolescence. And one might say we've slowly lost our intellectual abilities. I would argue the only reason anybody ever really cared about the intellectual pursuits in the past is because it led you to a better life. Back when going to college wasn't something we gave away like fucking, gumballs. Like, here's quarters to get the gumballs out of the machine. Like a leaking gumball machine, we give away the ability to go to college. And there we've diluted what even college means. Back in the day, only smart people or wealthy people were allowed to go to college. And it turned out it meant more back then. Now everybody gets to go to it, so it's no different than going to high school. Ironically, it turns out that being a tradesman is actually far more a better job than being some sort of college educated. Now, I'm not saying it like engineering and doctors and all this, but by the way, doctors have a really hard job, and there are still fields that are highly profitable. But when you consider for a moment that you can actually be certified in some sort of trade, hell, in less than a month, you can be certified as a truck driver. And you're making anywhere from 70, 80 in the first year or so. And then after a couple of years, you're probably making 100,000. You know, you just job hop to the right companies. And maybe it takes a few years to get to 100K, but you got no bills, no responsibilities, no fucking problems, you know? And then you think the same thing with people that become accountants. You know, it's like there's a lot of opportunities that the world needs, like plumbers, electricians, and all that shit. And yet those are fundamental things that we need. What America, in my opinion, basically trains you to be, like I've said before, a domesticated failure. And they are completely successful, but I'd say at least half of the populace, if not 78, let's say 70% of the populace. You know, you got 5% that figure it out, 20% that eventually figure it out. But how many years do they waste on that percent? And then you got that 70% that are just at some different level of complete failure, maybe the lower 20%, because they just can't kick it. They can never kick themselves out of adolescence. And you know why? Because they never had to. And we bring it back to the intellectual pursuit. The only reason anybody ever cared about intellectual pursuit is because it meant more money, better house, therefore better pussy, better life. That's the only reason people ever cared about any of that shit. It's like women have a more honest way. Women, for all their shenanigans and problems, have a more honest way of looking at it. Like men will look at a woman and think, well, what does she look like? Women will go, what does he do? Meaning, like, when you look at the whole idea of an intellectual mind, she might find him somewhat stimulating, and vice versa if she has good conversation. But at the end of the day, he could be the most intelligent person in the world, but if he doesn't bring back the money, who gives a shit about that education? And this brings it back to the dumb rich guy. You know, the dumb rich guy is just as viable as the intelligent guy with the good job. It's about money. And I do appreciate that almost lizard-like, feline, instinctual kill instinct when it comes to that aspect of women. Because, yeah, and you think about it for a moment, why do women have to be that way? Well, because kids take a lot of resources. They take time and resources, and if you fuck up with the wrong guy, you're kind of fucked, you know? So basically, yeah, there's a big, huge cost in choosing what guy you choose to have kids with. That's why I find it so tragic to some degree in the modern era. How many women just go out and fuck up some guy in and out of jail, some thug, something like that? I'm like, I'm not saying them to come to me. No, I'm not saying that at all. But please, don't fuck up your children's life because you just feel hot and heavy for some fucking thug. You know, and if that's the case, you know, by the way, and if you're allowed to make these fuck up choices, then you should be fully responsible for all the cost of it. You know, just like, hey man, he commits the crime, he does the time. You fuck a thug, well, it's your hey, you committed to this. It shouldn't be anybody else's problem to pay your rent, do anything. And I bet, and this is part of the reason I've said for a while when it comes to abortion. I think abortion is abhorrent. It is sickening how many children we basically kill just because we don't want to be inconvenienced. But my fucking God, you look at some of the Nimrods out there that are just randomly reproducing for no fucking reason. And I'm like, yeah, thank God there's abortion. Birth control should be free and accessible everywhere. It should be something you can just get all the time, anytime you want. It shouldn't be hard to attain. And honestly, just as a closing thought, I honestly think if it wasn't for like, I often wonder, as bad as the Democrats are these days, if the Republican Party had a turnabout where they just one day said, and it'll probably never happen in my lifetime, they just said, you know, we're losing on this whole. We lose a good third, probably I'd say half of the Democrats that vote for Democrats. They're not real Democrats. They're conservatives in their business. They're conservatives with their money. They're conservatives with their husband's money. But that one issue, reproductive choice, basically is the linchpin that keeps them with the Democrats. I have family members that are like this. They do everything pretty much conservatively. But you know what? The one thing that they don't seem to fuck around about is like they've got to have access to their abortion, even if they're done having kids, because they want to make sure that their daughters, their granddaughters have that access. Now imagine for a second, for all the conservative things they normally do, imagine if there was a conservative party that said, yeah, I mean, we may not like it, but yeah, it's your body, your choice. Imagine the fucking social shift that would happen of all these women going, yeah, I'm tired of high taxes and I'm tired of this. I just want to have free to choose. And here's my line on it. If women have the right to choose, even though I do think it's rather abhorrent what they're doing, then we should have the right to, at the birth of every child, paternity check. We should know from day one who the hell the father is. I'm not asking for a man to be able to walk away from his responsibility, but I am saying you should goddamn know if you're the father. And maybe someday we could say, you know, and by the way, yeah, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of guys out there that just be playing it up players, no different than what we see with the, you know, the trailer parks and the ghettos and the prison system. You know, your gang members or your hillbillies. That ain't my kid. Yeah. Well, here's the purity test. Just like from the get-go, Guaranteed that every father knows that is his child. And then ladies, you can have all the birth control and abortion, because Lord knows they're never going to develop anything where a guy would have the right to take a pill or, you know, something to where a guy could prevent it. And that's part of the reason I say if you don't want to have kids, seriously, vasectomies. We could solve all these problems and bring it back to mathematical mindset. We could prevent so many goddamn problems if we just prevent them from ever happening. Counter it. You know? This was going to happen and you turned it around, stopped it. Common sense. But I live in a world where the majority of people are cars, clothes, fashion. Look at our size of our TV. And by the way, it is kind of amazing how big TVs are these days. How little energy they take when you think about it. You got TVs that are the size of a goddamn sheet of plywood now. I've lived long enough to see such miracles. I'm just saying. Yeah, we live in a wonderful world, but man, yeah, you can be retired young if you want to. But most people, it's all about peacocking and showing off. And part of the reason I'm not a hermit, but I'm kind of done with that whole Christian mindset of like, yes, we can work together and make a better world. Because the truth of it is, most people, the only part of the better world they want is where somebody else waits hand and foot on them. That's all they want. They don't want to put any effort in. And most people are just parasites. And if you were to, hypothetically, if there was a collapse, it wouldn't take long for the world to clean this problem up real fucking quick. Which, just as an ultimate closing thought. So somebody pointed this out about a bunch of female socialists going off about socialism. Revolution. And it's ironic because did no woman, because a woman's got to tell them this type of stuff. A man tells them that, and they're like, they just think you're a misogynist or some sort of predator or something. You're like, you know, the first thing that happens when a country collapses, all your rights disappear. There are no rights. There's only what you can protect. And the only thing you really have of currency is your ass, honey. That's it. That's the only currency you have left. And that sounds horrible, doesn't it? But that's what happened in Venezuela. That's what happens everywhere. And you got to wonder if America ever had that level of collapse, how quickly all these problems would fix themselves. And then all these illusionary laws and rules and regulations just disappear, and something that actually worked for thousands of years gets put back in place. And hopefully, I doubt we'll do it, but people will take a lesson from the past and say, hey, you remember when they did all that other shit that didn't work? Let's not do that again. Anyways, I'm going to walk down to the river, do a little laundry, give you a little bath, fill up some of my jugs. Y'all take it easy. Freedom fill out. Peace.